Hi everybody, my name is Andrew. In this lesson, I'm going to talk about differences between whether and if. And I'm going to introduce some example sentences that show kind of the times when we can use either of these words. Let's get started. Okay, I want to first talk about the word if. The basic rule for using if is that we use if when we are making a conditional. So in many cases we begin conditional statements with if, like that sentence starts with the word if, like if you have time, or if you are free, or if we can, and so on. But sometimes this kind of has a different pattern, and it can be a little confusing to understand when to use and when to use whether in these cases. But simply put, we use if when making conditional sentences like this. First example is let me know if you need anything. So if you need anything, this is the condition. If you need something, if you need anything, let me know, contact me, in other words. Another example, I exercise twice a week if I have time. So this is my condition. If I have time, I exercise twice a week. So again, with conditionals, we can change the order of our if clause and our main clause, like if I have time exercise twice a week. One more example here. Is it okay if I sit here? This is a question, a very common question. Is it okay if I do something? Is it okay if I use your phone? Is it okay if I sit here? This is a common way to ask permission. Something. Lastly, what should we do if there is a problem? What should we do if there is a problem? So here is my condition if there is a problem. So you can use this sentence at work, you can use this sentence when making plans. There are many situations where you might need to ask this question about something you should do in case of a problem. So this is just an introduction to kind of conditional sentences and some common situations where we use if, but I want to compare this to whether. So we use whether actually sometimes in the same tenses as if, and you'll hear a lot of native speakers using if and whether to communicate the same idea. But we use whether when there are two options in the situation. So if you think about the situation and that you can say that there are maybe two choices to make, you can use whether instead of if. So examples. First, do you know whether they are arriving in the afternoon or the evening? So in this case, there are two choices in this situation. Two options. They are arriving in the afternoon or arriving in the evening. So we use whether to show that those are like the two options here, the two choices. One more example. She asked whether or not she could invite a friend to a dinner. So here I've included this or not. Whether or not she could invite a friend to dinner. So there is one option here that's clear. So she can invite a friend to dinner. And this or not is like the implied alternative option. So we don't say clearly, like, can I invite my friend to dinner? Or can I not invite my friend to dinner? We use whether or not to communicate those two options very clearly and quickly. So these are a couple of examples where you might hear native speakers using if. We can use whether or if, or it's very common um, to use whether or if in these kinds of statements. But perhaps it sounds a little more natural, or it sounds a little clearer to use whether, because there are these two options in these cases. Actually, to return to this one, let me know if you need anything. This is another example where you might hear a native speaker use whether as well, like, let me know whether or not you need anything. You might hear that, but I feel like this one is a little bit more commonly used with if. So yes, there are some cases where we can use both whether or if to communicate their idea or to communicate options. But a decent rule that you can follow is if there are two things to choose from in this situation, use whether. Another really good hint, I included it here, is up here. If you can use or not after this word. So you are thinking, should I use whether, should I use if you can use or not after it, you can use whether. That's okay. So to apply this hint over here, like, let me know whether or not you need anything. That sounds good, so we can use whether here. Or this. I exercise twice a week, whether or not I have time. So this actually changes the meaning of the sentence. So it's like whether or not I have time would mean like this person has some cases where there's no time and yet they exercise twice a week. It changes the meaning here. It's a condition only, so it doesn't make sense. It doesn't keep the meaning of the sentence. So we can try again. Is it okay whether or not I sit here? Again, it changes the meaning. It's not really like a condition in this case. Like, is it okay whether or not doesn't make any sense. So we should use if here. And one more, what should we do? If or not doesn't make sense, what should we do whether or not there is a problem? That doesn't make sense either. So we should use if. We should use if. So if or not is not something that we use. So keep that in mind. So no if or not if, whether or not doesn't fit, or it changes the meaning. It doesn't make sense to use if instead. So this is a nice hint that you can think about. Okay, let's go on to the next point here about whether. So another good hint for using whether is first we use it after a preposition. So like let's see, by, on, for, about, in, those words, prepositions, and we use it before infinitives. So infinitive verbs, that's to plus the verb, to plus the verb, that's the infinitive form. Let's look at some examples of this. First, they talked about whether to hire new staff or not. So here my preposition is about, so whether follows the preposition, whether it comes after the preposition. And here I have a verb in the infinitive form. To hire, to hire. So here they talk about if to hire would be incorrect. We cannot use if in this sentence. They talk about whether to hire new staff or not. Here I've included or not, which means they talk about the topic of hiring new staff or not hiring new staff. There are these two alternatives again. So preposition infinitive verb. This is a really good rule to follow when you are choosing between whether and if. One more example of this. I can't decide whether to buy a watch or a clock. I can decide whether to buy a watch or clock. So here we have decided the just a verb here, but after this, after whether is an infinitive verb. To buy, I can decide if to buy is not correct. We cannot use if. If here we can use whether because the verb is in the infinitive form. To plus my verb. So I can decide whether to buy a watch or a clock. In this situation, again, there are two options, a watch or a clock. So a couple points there to remember from this. Whether should be used when you have two choices, two alternatives in your situation, and use it after a preposition before an infinitive verb. Okay, so I want to finish this lesson by showing a situation where both are okay to use actually. They make grammatically correct sentences, but the meaning changes. So there are some situations where you should be careful because there could be a miscommunication. Let's look at this pair. First, please call me if you are going to the meeting. And please call me whether or not you are going to the meeting. So what is the difference here? The first sentence means please call me only if you are going to the meeting. So that means if you are not going to the meeting, don't call me. I don't need you to call me. Please call me if you are going to the meeting. The second sentence here, though, shows whether or not in the sentence. Please call me whether or not you are going to the meeting. This means if you are going to the meeting, call me. If you are not going to the meeting, call me. It means it doesn't matter regardless of the situation. Please call me. So this is an example of situation where both are actually okay to use, but there is small difference in expectation. There is small difference in meaning. So please keep this in mind. Like if you are making plans or you are in this kind of situation, a communication situation, it can be important to be very clear and accurate when you choose between if and whether. So one example here. But as I said, there's some situation like this up here with the weather, where you might hear people using them interchangeably, using them in the same way, but as long as you can remember these guidelines we talk about for weather and remember to use if for conditionals, you can probably have very few problems, I think. So I hope that this lesson was helpful in explaining some of the difference between if and whether. But if you have any questions or comments, or if you want to practice a sentence with these words, please feel free to do so in the comment section of this video. Of course, if you like this lesson, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel.